and we never had a money talk.
It wasn't focused.
We never talked
Yes.
about it in the sense of, I think over years, and I love what you're doing, Doug, because I think that we don't know how to have the conversation.
Hello and welcome to the Julie and Gino podcast. My name is Gino Barbaro, one of the co-founders of Barbaro 360, and I am here with my lovely wife, Julia.
I'm here.
How are you doing, baby?
I'm good.
We've got another amazing show today. From Marine to Benedictine monk to financial expert, Doug Lynam's journey is anything but ordinary. After leading a prestigious school's math department as a monk for 20 years, Doug transitioned into finance and is now a partner at Longviews Asset Management, managing $250 million in assets. He's the best-selling author of From Monk to Money Manager and Taming Your Money Monster, blending spirituality, psychology, and finance. Today, Doug helps people align their money with their values to create a life of purpose and peace. Welcome to the show, Doug. How are we doing?
You're doing great. Thanks, Gino. Thanks, Julia. Honored to be here.
We'd spoken at length before we hit the record button, and I think your journey's been incredible. Why did you get into money? That was my first question, because it seems like when you talk about it, you're not really talking about the money or the making of money, but just like what money can do for people.
Yeah, well, how did I get into money? That's a long story. Reluctantly and by accident, I would say. Kicking and screaming, I would say. So as we talked about before the show started, I grew up in a fairly wealthy family. It was relatively affluent. Grew up in suburbia outside Chicago. But money was really weaponized in my family. When my parents divorced, they used money as a tool to get back at each other. And they kind of sometimes used their kids as financial pawns to kind of, if I asked for something, my mom would say, well, ask your dad, he's got all the money. And ask your dad. And then he'd say, well, I give your mom all my money. She gets all the child support and alimony. And so it was like you felt guilty about asking for anything. And so a lot of times we went without stuff because it just was too much of a fight. And that was really, so I had developed what I would call a very money avoidance style. I had this really negative attitude towards money. It took me a long time to realize that money wasn't evil. Money wasn't bad. My parents just had their money issues because they grew up in a very poor family. They were very, what I would say, money anxious. They had a lot of anxiety around money. And so that just seeped out in how they were relating to their kids and in the world. And so, but my brothers and I, we all rebelled. Eventually, first I went off to the Marine Corps. I went to officer candidate school, graduated, taught my class. The Marines would be a great way to kind of, because everything's got to take care of. It's not really, you're living a life of service. And I had a great time there, but I realized that, as I said before, unresolved anger issues and high explosives, bad combination. Maybe you don't want to go around killing people for a living. So I had a bit of a spiritual awakening and then turned down my commission, did not go active duty, and then went off to a monastery where I was looking to find God and the meaning of life and purpose and all those good things. And but it turns out in the monastery, we all took a vow of poverty, but we took it a little too seriously. And a few years in, the monastery went bankrupt. And so we were in this really difficult financial situation. We couldn't afford, some of the brothers were elderly and needed a lot of medical care. The roof was leaking, all these things. And so I was the youngest monk by about 30 years at the time. I was 21 when I joined, and I was sort of the grunt, and I just kind of raised my hand for some dumb reason and said, well, throw me in, coach. I'll try to figure this out. And it took me a couple of years to, went to a bookstore, got every book on finance I could, started reading it, and eventually pulled a community out of bankruptcy and realized I could learn this stuff. I could do it. And that's how I kind of got started.
Well, my next question is, how did your, money view get shaped from being a Benedictine monk?
Well, it was a long journey. I think I started going into the monastery, taking St. Paul a little too seriously when he said that the love of money is the root of all evil. So if the love of loving money is bad, how do you treat something that's inherently evil is to hate it. And so I really pushed away. And I subsequently went back and looked at the ancient Greek and realized there's many, many words for love in Greek. And that's just one of what Paul was saying there has a lot more nuance in the Greek than the way we translate it in English. But then I would say it took me a long while to come around to what I would say more of a Mark Twain perspective, who said that's the lack of money, that's the root of all evil, right? Because I realized how much suffering not having money was creating for myself, for the people I loved. And it was, and everyone, I could just see so much suffering that was unnecessary. It's unnecessary. Some suffering you just can't avoid, but this money stuff, it's avoidable if you can become financially literate and you can tame your money monsters and overcome these sort of negative attitudes that we have, mostly coming from our childhood wounding, from the whatever money scripts we got from our parents, whatever we picked up from our environment, most of which are unhelpful. And so I'm really trying to help people understand the deeper psychology of why they have the relationship they have with money and how to heal those wounds so they can use their wealth, build their wealth, and use it as a tool for love and service to a suffering world.
Doug, you had said before we started recording this that it was easier in your family to talk about sex than it was about money. Exactly. And I would probably say that 99% of the people listening to this are probably going to agree with you. Why is that, in your opinion?
Well, because money brings up all of our anxieties. There's so much of our identity is wrapped up in money. There's so much power and control. And so I think it's such a taboo topic in our culture. There's a cultural element to it, and then there's a psychological element to it. And I think it's something, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anger around these issues. People either being ashamed if they have too much, they don't have enough. It's like we tend to judge people based on their socioeconomic status. And so it really feels like I think people are very reserved around these issues, and we have a culture that doesn't want to talk about it. Or when we talk about it, it tends to be, and it's like, we don't talk about the psychology of it very much. We talk about how to make it. There's all these money's in our culture everywhere, but like talking about your relationship, your personal finances is just very hard for folks. And I understand it. I'm the same way. I still have these issues myself. I'm still working through them with everybody else. I'm just getting better at it every day.
Doug, what do you see as a result working with people? What do you see as far as their family life, personally, obviously, but also into their marriage, into their family life as a result of working with them around money?
Well, financial issues in a marriage are like termites in the foundation of your house. You ignore them long enough and the whole thing comes down. And, even so minor financial issues can turn a rock solid relationship into a dumpster fire. Yeah. And so if you're not on the same page with your partner and you have very different goals and attitudes and beliefs around money, it's going to cause constant friction and stress. So working with couples, a lot of it is just understanding what is your money archetype, like what is your money monster. And I've identified 18 different ones in my new book using a tool called the Enneagram, which some readers may be familiar with, but it's a very ancient and powerful typology system that's now been grounded in neurobiology and childhood developmental psychology. And so really understanding how what your ego structure is, how you approach life, but also how you approach money in particular is the lens through which I'm looking at it. And understanding your lens that you're seeing money through, and understanding the lens your partner is seeing it through. And then what are your communication styles around money? And so being able to adapt and adjust and flex around your partner so that you can get on the same page and to be a team and not be at odds with each other all the time.
DougLineman.com. Go to the website, pick up the book, Taming Your Money Monster. And real quick, Doug, I know my wife wants to jump in here, but you're looking at the classic tyrant, innocent here. I was tyrannical, but not in the way that you think. I was more of a self-tyrant. And why is that? If you're listening to this, I felt fearful. I had 6 kids. I kept hearing, you have to pay for college. You're not going to have enough. You need retirement. And I kept telling my wife, we can't spend. I have to save for the family. So I was more of a tyrannical control freak, but not in the way that you think that, I want to control my wife. I was just coming out of a place of fear, a place of anxiety. And my wife was the innocent going, everything's going to be okay. Let's trust in God. And I think she's right ultimately. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but how are we going to pay for all this stuff? And she's like, you'll be okay. I trust you. But time out. Am I doing the right thing? And for us not to be able to have that conversation up until a few years ago and having totally different backgrounds. I came from an immigrant background that loved to save money and, that we were hardworking. And my wife came from a single family background and money was not really that important. And
well, hold on. It was important, but the whole difference is I think that came from such a different background and we never had a money talk.
It wasn't focused.
We never talked about it in the sense of, I think over years, and I love what you're doing, Doug, because I think that we don't know how to have the conversation. And we've been married for what, it's going to be 27 years. That's a long time.
But you're still figuring it
out. Well, you're never going to stop figuring it out.
We're just getting there. Yes. And that's what I want to make clear to everyone listening is, we didn't have it figured out. We still don't have it figured out. But it's a conversation that we're having.
But I'll say one thing. You need to figure it out because your kids are watching you 100%. And these patterns are going to repeat. Yeah. It is no entrance that if you go into the inner city and all of a sudden one generation to the next generation, or I don't want to be like my mom or my dad. Unfortunately, some of my aspects of my adult life, I'm like my mother.
Yeah.
And it's, and you be quiet right there. Okay. I love my mom. But some of the things I don't love about
I
my
love
mom,
your
and
mom.
they manifest themselves through the
Yeah.
tyrant, through that.
Yeah. I want to know, Doug, I want to know, first of all, because I love your book name, Taming Your Money Monster. I want to know where you came from, where you got that title, because I really do love it. And tell me what I could find in the book when I get it.
All right. Well, so title came kind of towards the end, but it actually came out of my first book is called From Monk to Money Manager, a former monk's financial guide to becoming a little bit wealthy and why that's okay. And I have a chapter in there on money monsters that I was just teasing out the idea, and I came up with these 15 different money archetypes, but I didn't have they were kind of loose but it was probably my favorite chapter of the book because there was something really there to expand. So I basically took that chapter. And then I found this really cool tool called the Enneagram. And I realized this epiphany that all these money monsters I came up with, they would map very cleanly onto this typology system with some gaps. There were some things I was missing and some that were a little off, but then I could adjust. And then, so I already had the money monster idea going back from the first book, and it just became an obvious title.
Wow.
I love it. And when I get the book, what can I find? Am I able to read the book and just what am I gonna get from it?
Okay, so my first book, From Monk to Money Manager, is really a how-to book. That's a book for if you want to learn how to earn, save, invest, like how you do taxes, how you do insurance. I use my stories, my time in the monastery, the people I work with as investment advisor, as anecdotes, to just kind of make it engaging. But it's such a good primer with all the things I wish I had known as a kid but didn't. And this, I think, Taming Your Money Monster is a much more mature book in the sense that it's a why do book. Why do you make the same silly mistakes over and over and over again? And really getting to understand how your ego is structured from the ground, from childhood all the way into midlife and into really, it sort of really maps the spiritual adventure that we're all going through in life. It gives you a real roadmap to psychological and spiritual growth, and using money as the kind of lens or tool with which we're seeing all this. How can you use money as a tool to grow in your spiritual life, to grow in your personal life, and also to have a healthier relationship to this world of finance?
People often say, if I build wealth, am I going to adhere to my values? How can you start building wealth and continuing to build wealth and still adhere to your values, not Doug's values, not Gino's values, your values? How do you do that?
That's a really important part. That's what I try to do in the book. It's a really tough question because first you have to figure out what your values are. Like, you need to articulate them. Most people say they have them, and we all do, but to really write them down or somehow to express them in a really clear way. And then see, how does my money align in these what I call the 4 pillars of finance, which is earning, saving, investing, and giving. You need to look at all 4 areas of your financial life and see, how do your values align in those areas? Are you in the right work? Is this a career that feeds your soul, or is this killing you? How are you saving prudently? For all the things that you need to take care of yourself and the people that you love. Are you saving according to, we all say we love our kids, of course, but are you saving for, like you said, for college and for retirement and for all these things? Like, these are things that we need to do in order to really serve the people that we love most. And then there's the investing part, and that's a very complicated issue, but depending on, there's so many different mutual funds out there that can help you do this work from the entire range of the political spectrum. So it's not my job to tell you, as you point out, to tell you what your values are. You may be liberal, you may be conservative. This book is really, I think, what's really cool about it, and this is a big intellectual project, is how do you come up? This was the big idea that was in my head when I was writing the book. Is how do you come up with an ethical framework for financial decisions that anyone could reasonably adhere to, that transcends religion, politics, and culture? And I think I've done that. And you have to read the book to see if I've succeeded. But it's really understanding in the Enneagram. Here's how we don't have time to go into explain the entire Enneagram. It's a very complicated system. But essentially, what it tells you is a couple of core things about your personality. The first and foremost is, what's your greatest unconscious fear? So what were the things that stressed you most as a child? What was the thing? So your ego has several components to it, right? We've got your nature, your DNA, which is kind of preset how your genes express. But then there's this nurture component, which is how you were raised. And the Enneagram helps explain the nurture portion of your personality. because it's what were the things that stressed you most as a child, or what formed your ego defenses and allowed you to individuate and differentiate from your parents, from the rest of your siblings and the rest of reality, to have an independent sense of self. I use car metaphors a lot because I think it's very helpful. So think of your Enneagram type as the type of car that you're driving. We all drive a unique year, make, and model, but there are patterns for cars. There's archetypes for cars. You go outside those patterns and your car isn't roadworthy. It doesn't work, or it doesn't fit the rules of traffic rules that we have for cars. And same thing with your ego, right? You can have like what I call, you might be more of a Humvee, you might be more of a compact car, you might be more of a family sedan. And so the Enneagram tells you kind of what's the chassis of your ego, what's that style, and that's formed by your greatest unconscious fear. But then that creates this is the thing you're always trying to outrun. You're trying to prevent this greatest fear from becoming a reality. And we tend to adopt a worst vice, or what I call your ego addictions. And this tends to be what I've really done is mapped out a Jungian understanding of the shadow, we call the shadow structure for the ego for each of the 9 archetypes. And so in your shadow structure, within yours, there's going to be one vice that's going to be what we call your greatest vice, the thing that you're we call them the 7 deadly sins, right?
Yeah.
Find out actually there's 9. They added to them over time. They forgot cowardice, and they forgot deceit. I think those are the 2 they added. I might be getting those wrong to the 7 deadly sins. But if you think about them, there's one of those that you're more prone to than the rest. Yeah. And so the Enneagram tells you which one that is, and then what's your path to spiritual growth and wholeness, and how then what I'm layering on top of it, how money is going to be the thing that's either going to feed that worst vice or help to tame it.
Julia, what are the 7 deadly sins, Julia? I gave you the acronym. Come on.
I don't know.
It's pale gas. Come on.
I've never heard that before.
Pale gas. Pride, anger. Come on.
I don't know.
Gluttony, envy.
Envy.
G is, I said that. So L is lust. A is avarice, and S is being slothful. Come on, baby.
Well, it's
the only reason I know it. I can just remember the pale gas. You never heard that before, really?
No.
So I got to figure out the other 2. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, cowardice is one, and deceit.
Yeah, and deceit.
Yeah,
I could definitely see that. That's
favorite movie. Shazam.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
You'd have the word sacred wounds. I guess affect, because we call them money traumas as well. Like those are the same. Can you go into what sacred wounds do and how they affect your money habits?
It's a big question, so I'm going to geek out on you a little bit. So
I want you to geek out, because this is the crux. This is the meat right here.
So I just want to say, my husband always wants to talk about money, and I'm not interested. But this to me is incredibly fascinating.
I want to talk about cap rates. I want to talk about rates of return, and she doesn't want to talk about this.
It just glaze over when you talk about real estate. I'm like, it's just not interesting. But this, I love.
Thank you.
The sacred word. Okay, so this is a new concept I'm introducing. This is my formulation. It's a new idea I'm throwing out into the world. And so one of the things about the Enneagram that I always struggled with is it always felt like it was kind of in the woo-woo realm for me. It felt kind of like astrology or whatever, and so I couldn't really write a book about it until I understood why it works. So most authors of the Enneagram will teach you how it works, but no one up to this point, to my knowledge, has successfully explained why it works. I think that's one of the big breakthroughs in this book. And let me explain the sacred wound a little bit, and that will give you a bit of a teaser. So think of it like this. When you were born, you had a physical umbilical cord that was cut that separated you physically from your mother. But you immediately develop a psychological umbilical cord that connects you to your caregivers. And that allows them to do most of the driving for you in the early years of your life, because you're completely helpless when you're first born. So you're egoically codependent on your parents.
Well, some adults are still that way too, Dreg. I didn't mean to interrupt you. We got a lot of adults that are that way as well.
Yes.
Let's hope.
Failure launch, right? We call that.
Yes.
But so here's what happens over time is that psychological umbilical cord, just like your physical umbilical cord, has to be cut from like 0 to 10 over those years. Some people say 0 to 7. We debate about that. But the point being is that psychological umbilical cord has to be cut by sharp negative emotions, because positive emotions will just reinforce your caregivers.
Yes.
And most of those negative emotions come through the nose. You tell them, like, don't kick the dog, don't bite your sister, don't throw your food on the floor, right? So those you have to you're setting boundary. Essentially, boundary setting is what's going to help a child develop their ego. But what we know from the neuroscience, and this is where I'm going to geek out a little bit, there's a pioneering researcher named Jaak Panksepp. He's we call an affective neuroscientist. And what he discovered in studying mammals, he did this experiment with mostly mice and rats. But what he discovered that in all mammals, we have in the limbic system of our brain, there's 7 core emotions, but there's 3 core negative emotions. Okay. And we call them the big 3. So these big 3 negative emotions are anger, sadness, and fear. So anger, sadness, and fear are the core negative emotions. And all of our other negative emotions have run off that circuitry. There's sort of a combination of those 3, and there's layers there, but that's the core that all mammals have. And that one of those 3 emotions, negative emotions, you experienced more of in your childhood. And that's what cut your psychological umbilical cord. But you can think like a color wheel, right? So we experience all 3 of them, but which one you got more of is going to tell you where you land on this Enneagram color wheel. And if you break that color wheel into 9 quadrants, then you get these 9 archetypes. And so, but then we break those, so we call them the triad. So we have to start by break the color wheel into 3 big pie slices. One is going to be your anger triad. One's going to be your sadness triad. And one is going to be your fear triad. Does that visual imagery hold?
Yes.
Got that?
Yes.
Okay. But then there's 3 ways to process that negative emotion. You can internalize it, like kind of giving yourself an emotional wedgie. You can externalize it, which is kind of like having a food fight with the world, or you can have both. So that's why we have 9 archetypes in the Enneagram. So there's 3 triads and 3 ways to process that negative emotion. And that it tells you what as we said before, that's your sacred, I call that your sacred wound. That's the thing that actually allows you to have individually to have an independent sense of self in the first place. So it sounds somewhat negative, but it's actually absolutely necessary for your ego to form, for you to individuate, and for you to grow and mature into a healthy adult.
You were reminding me of Inside Out, the movie. Did you ever see it?
No. Love that film.
Okay. Never saw it. It's excellent. It's a Pixar, right? Is it? I think it's Pixar.
I highly recommend it.
It shows about the emotions. It's actually very good for young people to watch. I thought it was great.
So I got to watch it now. Is that what you're telling me?
They have one other negative emotion. They use disgust is one of their other ones, but that's actually not part of the Enneagram for reasons.
Right. Yes. Wow, yeah, but awesome. It was really good though. Yeah.
So Doug, if I'm sitting here and I like what I'm hearing, how do I get to work with someone like you? Like, what are some of the things? Because I think people first need to understand that there's a pain, right? They need to understand that they want to change. So now I'm ready to go. How do you walk somebody through your methodology? How does that look?
Well, first I got to find out what your Enneagram type is. So there's some great tests. I could send you one. I actually have a license agreement with a company called IEQ9, which is the best Enneagram test out there. If you want to put that in the show notes, I get a little kickback when anyone takes a test through my unique link. But the reason I partnered with them is because it's about 95% accurate. Will tell you what your Enneagram type is. There's a lot of free tests out there. If you want to play around with those, they're fine, but they're only about 50% to 60% accurate. So it can be very confusing. And then once I know what your Enneagram type is, then I need to sit down and figure out what your money monsters are. And that's kind of a conversation we need to have about, well, are you more anxious? And are you anxious? Are you avoidant? Or which parts of your financial life does your anxiety or avoidance show up in more? And then and so I have people do like what we call a money monster chart. And so we make up a chart about looking at all these look at the 4 pillars of finance and whether you're anxious in one column or avoidant in another, and then listing just really clearly where are you struggling in this journey. And then we can pinpoint those problems more effectively, dig into the numbers and dig into the things like the budgeting and the spreadsheets and all that good stuff.
So what Doug is saying is, don't go to Doug by saying, I need to create my budget. I need to get my financial house in order. Let's not look at that yet. And Doug, I need you to share with me your money monsters, what your money monsters are, because I shared with you mine.
Sure.
So let's talk about yours a little bit, because it's interesting diving into it.
Well, let me answer another question. So if anyone wants to work with me, you can go to my website, DougLynham.com, DOUGLYN as in Nicholas, AM as in Michael.com. And I've got buttons there you can press and you can set up a free consultation. Happy to chat. But my money month, so in the Enneagram, let me explain my Enneagram type. It's maybe helpful for you. So I'm what's called a type 3. I'm in what's called a sadness triad. And what that means is that I have internalized and externalized sadness. Sometimes the word shame is also used. It's a perfectly good substitute. So you can think of it that way. It's like shame or grief around your identity. So what it means for me is I have this internalized shame or sadness about how I perceive myself. So I have this real negative self-talk about how I perceive myself. But then I have this shame or sadness about how I think other people perceive me. And that creates my greatest fear, which is being worthless. And so
time out. You're getting the left hook and you're getting the uppercut, right? I mean, it's like you're getting whacked at both places. Wow.
Right. And that creates my greatest fear, which is being worthless. And so my greatest fear is I don't have any value in my own eyes or in the eyes of others. So we call the type 3 the achiever. We're always trying to be very successful. Like we want to win the gold star. We want to get the pat in the head from teacher. We want to win the race. We want to run the marathons. We want to start the companies, right? And so my nickname, I give them all car names. So I call type 3 the race cars because we're always zooming for the finish line, but we're always leaving our authentic selves in the dust. Because we're really good mask changers. We're always putting on a mask or a facade that we think we're chronic people pleasers. I want you to like me. I want you to validate me. So what we're really looking is for validation and connection. But then if you layer on top of that the attachment theory of money of being either anxiously attached to money or avoidant, I'm avoidant, seriously avoidant. And I call that money monster the barrier, meaning we bury our heads in the sand like an ostrich. We don't want to look at it because all the shame that it brings up, all the grief that it brings up, all the sense of lack of, because we tend to tie our bank balance to we tie our self-worth to our net worth. Let's put it that way. And if you're a monk in a monastery and you're living about poverty, it's like there's a lot of shame. It's like I don't want to look at this stuff. I don't want to deal with it. And so that's really where my money monster is. And then the anxious money monster for the type 3, I call that the blinger. So they're the person who has to have all the status symbols. They got to have the fancy car, the nice house. Their financial life tends to look like a Hollywood set. It's beautiful on the outside, but kind of paint and the plywood on the inside because it's all about image.
Sure.
Before you jump in, I need to ask you, can you trace this back to your childhood, to your sacred wounds and to your money trauma? Is that where you 100%. Think this all comes from? Okay.
100%. And I could go into that if you want.
I do, because I think people need to start making the connection and saying, wow, this is just not foo-foo. And I never thought it was, but why is someone being successful and achieving? And the thing is, you may be thinking that Doug looks great on the outside and he is achieving, but the feeling's not there. And we want to have some type of success. So if you're not feeling as if you're successful, even though you may be outwardly portraying that, that's not going to be leading yourself to having a more fulfilling and happy life.
Yeah. Well, so if you're in the sadness triad, right? As I said before, you either internalize, externalize the sadness, or do both. Both of my brothers have so I have a twin, and I have an older brother and my twin brother who's slightly older than I am. They all became what I call type 4s. They all developed this deep internalized sadness, this sense of not knowing their place in the world. And I think that came from my parents, who were very good people and very loving in many, many ways. But they didn't really see us or validate. They didn't give us a lot of support or guidance. And so we kind of felt very adrift. So that, I think, created this internalized sense of not having a clear identity and sort of shame about our place in the world. And I probably would have been a type 4 like my brothers, except because I'm a twin and I was the runt, I always felt like I was the runt of the family. So I had this externalized shame about how I was perceived myself in relationship to my twin, because developmentally he was about a year ahead of me. He hit puberty about a year before me, and I was always trying to keep up with him and not feel like I was the loser all the time. So I was always like a duck with a feel. I was scrambling to keep pace with him, which I kind of did most of the time. Sometimes didn't, but it was a lot of hard work. So I developed this need to succeed, to prove that I wasn't a complete failure all the time. And so that's where my internalized and externalized shame or sadness came from, I think.
Thanks for sharing that.
That's amazing. Doug, do you work with younger people, like even young adults? What do you notice? It's almost like if you get them younger, wow, that would help them later on.
Right. Well, you guys probably know the power of compound interest. So if you can get people to understand how investing in money works and tame their money monsters earlier, they have more time for their assets and to grow and capture the power of the markets and really build their wealth. Because the sooner you start, the more successful you're likely to be. I think I'm going to get all the numbers wrong here, but look at Warren Buffett. They found out that most of his wealth came in like the last 10 years. Like if he had, it's just about time. It's about, he started at like, I forgot how young he was, like 7 or 8, he started investing and really started his own business at 12 and, was fairly successful by his 20s. And then it was the time value of money that really catapulted him into such tremendous success. And if you shorten that time horizon, you shorten the period, you're going to shorten the amount of money you're going to have in the bank.
And I ask because, we work with a lot of mostly adults in their 40s. Right.
But they have children now, right?
But they have young children. And I think we forget that we don't have those conversations. We're so focused on helping ourselves in this situation, right? A lot of times we're like, oh, money coaching, let me figure that out. And we forget about the people in our home, and maybe they're 20 and we're like, oh, they're good. They're fine. That's
exactly the time when people need it the most. It's like not talking about sex to your teenager. Like, what? 20 someone, this is exactly the time when you need to be talking about
Right.
money and
Yes.
sex and
Yeah.
relationships and all these things and navigating the world. Like money really does make the world go round. And if you don't understand it and you don't understand how you're relating to it, money is the tool for most actions. And maybe here's the thing that I've learned. This is where probably one of the most important insights of the book is that, as a friend of mine, Richard Rohr, said, if we don't heal our pain and heal our trauma, we're destined to transmit it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing I've learned is that money, since it's the tool for most actions, it transmits our trauma if we're not careful. It's the easiest way to transmit our trauma and cause suffering for ourselves and suffering for the people we love. And what I learned from studying the Enneagram is every time someone has wounded me and every time I have wounded someone else, I was acting out an unhealthy aspect of my Enneagram type, 100%. And so it really behooves us to give kids both not just financial literacy, but psychological literacy to understand how their brain works so they can go through life with a little more grace and dignity and a little more kindness and compassion.
Love that.
I heard this quote from online. I don't remember who said it, but I as I get older and I hear these types of podcasts, quote said, money does not corrupt, it reveals. And to me, that is so true because we want to blame money that person got bad because of money. Well, from the Enneagram and from you are projecting outward, you're transmitting what's going on inward. And all of a sudden that makes a lot more sense to me. Let's not blame the money. That's why this conversation is about money and that is not about money, I should say. That's why my wife loves it because we're not really talking about money. We're talking about all the stuff that is possibly related to money and then all the habits you create and then they manifest themselves and then money is the tool there and we want to blame money. Money is possibly just a symptom, correct?
Right. And let's tell a little story. This was a real revelation for me in the monastery. This was something that really was an eye-opener. There was a monk, I talk about him in my book, and I call him Brother Pius. And Brother Pius thought, money's evil and money's corrupting and so he refused to touch money for many, many years. He wouldn't touch cash, he wouldn't touch credit cards, he wouldn't touch debit cards because he thought, money pollutes the soul. And so the problem with that attitude is that it kind of gave him this holier than thou perch that he was looking down on the rest of us with. And it actually inflated his ego. It didn't diminish it. And so rejecting money for the wrong reasons is just as damaging as going after it for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
And so even if we were to entertain his misguided hypothesis that money is corrupting and he doesn't want to touch it, well, then someone else has to touch it more to keep his hands clean. So like they're dumping all this money problems onto me and then treating me like I'm the bad guy because I'm the one handling money all the time. It's like, what? This is not right. And so what I learned also is that there isn't like this be a decent human switch that flips on and off depending on your bank balance. Like kindness and compassion are not correlated to your tax bracket. It's absolutely idiotic. Like there's so many wealthy people who are wonderful human beings. And there's so many poor people who are wonderful humans, and they're horrible people across the spectrum. Right. It doesn't correlate. It's just not, it's not, money's not the problem. You are.
Yeah. I love that.
Money can't buy happiness. Poverty can't buy anything. That's basically the bottom line, right?
Can I steal that line? Is that yours?
Yes, you can. And to me, it's because I had an internal struggle with it. I was the pizza guy. My tribe was the middle class. Let's not get any bigger. And I had a serious revelation with it. If I become wealthy and I make more money and I'm around people who are practicing Catholics, are they going to look down on me because I'm the guy who's seeking money and seeking to build a business here? So for me, that was challenging. And I'm going through it from your perspective. I'm making money for the right reasons or for the wrong reasons. And it was hard. It was very hard for me. And once I realized that's nonsense, I'm not making money because I want to inflate my bank balance. I'm making money because it's just a result. I want to get really good at something. And the better I get at something, the more money I'm going to make. The more value that I create, the more money I'm going to make. And I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I love it. And I'm doing it because I'm really creating value. I'll give you a quick story. When I started out in the business world and I opened the restaurant, I did what most business owners do. I started the business to provide for my family and to make money. When in reality, what business owners should do, not being the technician, you should start your business to provide for the customer and to provide for the marketplace. That's what you should do. And then once you do that, all of a sudden, And I know my wife's going to say, well, Gino, you did. You helped so many families, blah, blah, blah. But it didn't feel like that. But when you really start the business by not focusing on how much money you're going to make, but on how much value you can provide. And look at Jeff Bezos. You can say whatever you want about the guy. But back in 1999 and 2000, they were making fun of him because he wasn't making any money. But he had a grander vision. His vision was to provide an amazing product where you can get something delivered within 24 hours. And all of a sudden, guess what? He's one of the richest men, if not the richest man in the world. And his guiding principle was not about the money. It was about creating something unique, something different, and providing value to the marketplace. So for me, money is the end result. Money is what is the byproduct of all of that.
And I would take it one step further and say, like, unless you've mastered the art of multiplying the loaves and fishes and you can work miracles, without any money in your pocket, you really can't serve the world very effectively. And that was that was my biggest frustration in the monastery was at heart, everyone had a good heart. Like, everyone meant well. And yet these money issues that plagued us prevented us from helping people effectively. And so the point isn't just to make the money. As you said, first you want to serve. You're serving the world through your product or your service, but then the results, the fruit of that labor, also it can be used in love and service. Like, you can use it to fix the crack in the world that you were born to heal. That's really what I want people to try to do. Is like, you are here. You know, God put you here for a reason. You have a mission. You have a purpose. You have something to do and something to accomplish. And it's going to be very hard to accomplish anything without money in your pocket.
Yeah. No, I love that. We've been watching The Chosen. Okay. I love, some people love it. Some people don't. I love it because I do research. I'm like, I feel like I'm like, wow, I really don't know the Bible very well.
Yes.
But is it Joanna? Is she the one that helps pay for the burial? And she's helping she's helping financially. She has money. And I love the fact that Jesus asked certain people to follow, like, leave their stuff, follow me, but not Joanna. She had money and she helped provide everyone needed. And I thought that was interesting too. I was like, I researched her a little bit. I thought that was fascinating. And if I'm wrong, if anyone wants to email me, please do so. But from what I understand,
just email her and bother her anyway.
Bother me anyway. Yes. I love that. But I think that we forget, because there's a lot of guilt around focusing on money and being Christian, mostly Catholic.
Yes.
But at the same time, all of the things that we were able to do with that is incredible. I mean, we have a missionary daughter who works with Life Teen, and we can help them if they need it. And so, you know what I mean? And that, to me, as like, it's a struggle sometimes, but there's, and we're human. And so we're never going to be fixed, but it's something to remember. So,
and I actually, in my first book, From Monk to Money Manager, I go into the history of money in the Bible quite a bit and try to uncover that. But there's so many things we have to remember about the time that Jesus lived in. It was so different from our own, and money was not the same thing exactly as it is now, because you have to remember, capitalism hadn't been invented yet. Corporations hadn't been invented yet. The rule of law was very sketchy. There's so many things that we didn't have. And so it was really a system where there were winners and losers, and the winners tended to be slaveholders. They tended to be oppressors. And it was really a bifurcated system that they were living in. We didn't really have a middle class that we think of today. And so if you were part of the empire and you were probably there, you were wealthy, it was more of a zero-sum game, right? There were winners and there were losers. And today we're not in a zero-sum game. You're getting wealthy. That does not come at the expense of somebody else. Yeah. And that's the thing that we forget about.
That's good.
And so to realize that in a capitalistic system, in a free trade market, both sides in some sense are winning. Now there's things called externalities, and that's a whole complicated subject. But when you have a free market like we do, if it's run well in a well-regulated system, everybody wins, right? You're better off because you provided a service to your customer. The customer is better off because they've received that service or good. And over time, everybody's lives gets better. And so that's something that I think we forget about when we're trying to apply a historically dated mindset around money to our modern financial systems.
Julie and I interviewed a gentleman. I forgot what his name is. It's on the Julie and Gino podcast. He did a podcast based on Jesus and money. Yeah. And there's a couple of things I pulled out. Number one, the money center was Jerusalem at the time. Jesus only talked about money when he got towards Jerusalem. He was the money changers. He was mad at the middlemen. He was mad at the temple being used for profit. He was mad at the upper class. Basically what's going on right now, the power center, the people who were in control. He never really spoke badly about money. The whole idea of the talents, giving one person 10 talents, giving one person 5, and then one person 1. The ones who multiplied it did really well. The one who buried it, he got really mad at the person. So if you really dive into it, very few people have looked at the Bible from a money perspective, and this gentleman did it. I'm going to put it in the show notes as well. It was really fascinating. It was a great topic because no one really looks at it. They only pull certain quotes at it, like you said, the love of money and that.
Well, the love of money one, a lot of people leave the word love out.
Yes, the money.
And
yes,
that frustrates me more than anything.
Yes.
And remember, in Greek, there's like 5 different words
Yes,
for love.
exactly.
Yes.
So I coined a new term. I call it, I forgot what the biblical, it was phil argeria was the word that Paul used. So phil means love, argeria means money. And so it's a lower form of love. And so what I've coined is a term I call agape argeria, or a divine love of money. And so I think that's where we want to go towards.
Absolutely.
Where we're using this as a tool for love and service, not just for selfish greed.
I love that.
That is so good.
Doug, as we wrap up, give us the website once again, place for people to reach and work with you.
Check it out. It's DougLynam.com, DougLynam. And my new book, Taming Your Money Monster, it drops next Tuesday. I'm not sure when this podcast is released, but probably after. It's probably already out by the time you're hearing this, but I think it's going to be a bestseller. And the foreword was written by Richard Rohr, who's a very famous Franciscan priest. And I think people are going to really enjoy it.
It's interesting because your last name, I'm a New Yorker. I tend to speak too fast, so I go Lynam. I said it real quick, so it's Lynam.
You got it.
Yes, exactly. So I got to slow it down when I speak.
Like line them up.
Yeah,
there you go.
Awesome. Any final words?
No, this is a really, really helpful conversation. I think this is really what I personally needed.
Yeah. All right. I
the
came
kids
through
last night.
for
It
you.
was Sophia. She came into the living room last night. She's like, "Are you guys talking about money again?" She's like, "Can we talk about something else?"
It's not about money. It's a really well. Real quick, the story behind that. She was 10 years old at the time. My wife, stay-at-home mom, homeschooling, and for that year, my wife wrote this cookbook for us.
Well, it was my husband's cookbook.
Well, it was my husband's.
But
See
it was
that?
back in the day with the computer. Cece was just born,
and she took a little bit of time away from Sophia, and I think it scarred her a little bit. So, and she's still scarred.
She loves Mama.
Listen, Doug, we want to thank you for being on the show. And I want to thank actually the listeners for taking their time out, spending some time on a topic that's truly important. Remember, money does not corrupt. It reveals. If you want to learn about the Enneagrams, if you want to learn about money scripts, if you want to learn about sacred wounds, go to DougLynam.com and buy your book today. Thanks a lot, Doug. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Gino. Thanks, Julia. Such an honor.
Thank you.
What a great conversation.
So good.